Something good happened to me recently. Nothing I asked for, nothing I earned in any obvious way, just kindness offered freely by someone who didn't have to give it. And it turned out to be one of the hardest things I've had to sit with all year. That's not supposed to make sense. Good things are supposed to just feel good. But this one didn't. Not right away. And figuring out why took me somewhere I didn't expect. Last time, I told you I'd finally learned how to ask for what I wanted out loud. No more shrinking the sentence down to something smaller and safer. But I also told you something came back afterward that caught me off guard. An answer. And in that moment, I realized asking and receiving were two completely different skills, and I'd never actually learned the second one. This is where I found out exactly how true that was. I got home late, later than I meant to. Another evening spent at Aunt BB's, making sure she'd eaten, making sure her medication was where it needed to be, promising I'd be back tomorrow the way I promise every single day now. I was tired in the specific way you get tired when the tiredness isn't really about your body. The nickname is one I gave her myself, way back before I could really talk in full sentences, and it just stuck for good. She's loved bees for as long as anyone can remember. Kept a little garden specifically to attract them. Could tell you the difference between a honeybee and a carpenter bee before I could tie my own shoes. And for years, decades, she wore her hair in this teased-up beehive style, like something out of an old photograph, long after it had gone out of fashion anywhere else. Nobody had to explain the nickname. It just fit her, completely, the way a nickname sometimes does. When I was small, she used to sit me down on an overturned bucket next to her hummingbird feeder and just let me watch. Bees would come first, usually, working the flowers she'd planted specifically for them. Then the hummingbirds, darting in fast and impatient, chasing the bees off like they owned the place. She'd narrate the whole thing like it was the most important show on television. See, the bees do the real work. The hummingbirds just show up for the party. She taught me why bees mattered, really mattered, not just as an interesting fact, but as something she seemed to genuinely believe held the whole world together in some quiet way most people never noticed. I didn't understand half of what she told me back then. I just knew I loved sitting there with her, and I loved that she trusted me enough to explain something she clearly cared about so deeply. That's who I've been driving back and forth to see almost every evening for the past several weeks now. She's slower these days, some days sharper than others, and every single visit, I leave feeling like whatever I did wasn't quite enough. Like there's always one more thing I should have caught, should have asked, should have noticed. And then I pulled into my driveway, and something looked different. It took me a second to place it. My lawn was mowed, not just trimmed, actually mowed, edged, the whole thing. Done properly, done well, the kind of done that takes real time, not 5 rushed minutes. And I just stood there for a second, keys still in my hand, trying to understand what I was looking at. My neighbor came out onto his porch when he saw my car. "Saw the grass getting away from you," he said, easy, like it was nothing. "Figured with everything going on with your aunt, you've got enough on your plate. Wasn't a big deal." Wasn't a big deal. 20 minutes earlier, I'd been driving home replaying every single thing I still hadn't done for Aunt BB that day. And now I was standing in my own driveway being told, gently, that someone had quietly taken one thing off my plate without me ever asking. And I didn't feel relief. That's the part that actually stopped me. I felt this strange, tight thing in my chest. Something close to embarrassment, honestly. Like being helped was its own kind of confession. Like it proved something about how much I'd been failing to keep up with. Out loud, in front of someone. I sat down on my front step, not really ready to go inside yet, and that's when I noticed him. A praying mantis, sitting right there on the freshly cut grass, perfectly still, like he'd been waiting. Lil Green Dude. At least, that's what I'm calling him. He's never exactly introduced himself. I'd met him once before, or someone just like him, on a bench outside a jewelry store, at a moment I needed exactly this kind of company. And here he was again, like he'd just been waiting for the next moment I'd need him. "Hey, Lil Green Dude, you following me around now?" Nothing. Not even a twitch. "You know somebody else mowed that, right? That's not your grass." "Doesn't bother you at all, apparently." He cleaned one of his front legs, slow and unbothered, like I'd interrupted something far more important than whatever I was going through. "Yeah, I can see we're coming at this from very different places." He didn't move. Just sat there, steady, right in the middle of grass someone else had taken care of. Like he belonged there exactly as much as I did. I sat there for a while, Him steady on the grass, me steady on the step. And I found myself actually asking the question instead of just feeling the discomfort and moving past it. Why does this feel bad? Someone did something kind. Why does kind feel like a weight instead of a relief? And a memory came up, one I hadn't thought about in a long time. I was maybe 9, and a family friend, someone my parents knew well, always around for holidays, always generous in that big, visible way some people are, had given me something. Nothing enormous, honestly. A bike, second-hand but nice, that his own kid had outgrown. I remember being genuinely thrilled. I rode it every single day that summer. Then months later, there was some disagreement at a family gathering. I don't even remember what it was about. Something small and adult, and not really about me at all. And in the middle of it, he said something like, "After everything I've done for this family," and I remember distinctly feeling my stomach drop, because I knew exactly what he meant. The bike. My bike. The one I thought had just been a gift. I don't think he even remembered saying it, honestly, or thought much of it at the time. But 9-year-old me filed it away as a fact about how the world worked. Things that look free aren't actually free. Somewhere down the line, someone's going to remember what they did for you, and you're going to owe them for it, even if nobody says so out loud until the moment they decide to collect. That's not a belief I chose. But it explains, pretty precisely, why I was sitting on my own front step, looking at a perfectly mowed lawn, feeling like I'd just been handed an invoice instead of a gift. If that just hit you, because you've ever felt a knot in your stomach instead of gratitude when someone did something kind for you, hit that like button right now, because you're not alone in this, and Mo is just getting started. I sat with that for a long time. Long enough that the sky started going orange. Long enough that Lil Green Dude eventually moved on, one careful step at a time, off into the grass and out of sight. The very next morning, before I even left for work, I texted my neighbor. My thumb actually hovered for a second. Old habit, reaching for something bigger, an offer to cut his grass next time, a gift card, anything that would even things back out. I felt it happening in real time. That same familiar pull to make the kindness cost me something before I'd let myself keep it. I deleted what I'd started typing and wrote something simpler instead. Hey, really appreciate the lawn. Means more than you probably know, with everything going on. And I left it right there. No repayment attached. No score to settle. Just a thank you, allowed to be the whole entire response. He texted back almost immediately. Anytime, man. That's what neighbors are for. 4 words, and somehow they landed heavier than the lawn itself had. Like he genuinely meant it. Like there was no invoice coming, because there had never been one in the first place. I just spent 20 years assuming there had to be. And once I actually named the belief, things that look free aren't actually free, somebody's going to collect eventually, I started noticing it wasn't just about lawns at all. A couple days later, I was checking out at a pharmacy, and the cashier told me my total had come back lower than expected. Some kind of discount had automatically applied that I hadn't asked for and didn't fully understand. And instead of just feeling lucky, my stomach did that same small drop it did in the driveway. I actually asked her to double-check it, twice, like I needed to make sure I wasn't accidentally getting away with something I'd have to pay for later, one way or another. She checked, a little confused about why I was pushing back on my own good news. It was right. I still stood there for a second afterward, uncomfortable, half expecting her to call me back to the counter and say, "Just kidding," and charge me the difference after all. Same knot, same 9-year-old, waiting for the invoice that never actually comes, because most of the time, it was never actually coming in the first place. My family friend's comment wasn't a universal law about how kindness works. It was one man, one offhand sentence, on one difficult day, that I turned into a permanent rule about the entire world. So, here's what I actually did. Once I saw it clearly, I let myself just take the discount. I didn't donate the difference somewhere to even the score. Didn't feel like I had to justify it to anyone. Didn't wait for the collection that wasn't coming. I just said thank you and left. That's the actual shift. Not becoming someone who never wants to reciprocate. That's not it either. And I don't want you to hear this as an excuse to be careless with people who are good to you. It's just refusing to let an old 9-year-old's math run the calculation every single time something good happens to me now. And look, if nobody ever taught you this stuff, that's exactly why this channel exists. Hit subscribe, because Mo figured it out and now it's your turn. I keep thinking about Lil Green Dude, showing up right when I needed him, sitting there on grass that wasn't his to sit on either, technically, and looking completely unbothered about it. Maybe that's the whole lesson, honestly. He didn't earn the grass. He didn't feel like he owed the lawn an explanation. He just sat there, in a good thing, without needing to justify it. I don't know how many good things I've quietly declined over the years because some part of me was still waiting for the bill. But I think I finally understand. Some of it really was just grass. Some of it really was just a gift. But it also left me with something I hadn't expected, because if I've spent this long not knowing how to just receive something freely given, I have to wonder whether I actually know how to give that way either. Whether the things I've handed to other people over the years were ever really free, or whether I've been quietly keeping score without even realizing it, the same way it was once kept on me. Stick around, because where Mo goes next, you're not going to want to miss it.